Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you tuning into this webinar. Our topic today is targeted at getting potential new hosts motivated to start hosting on Airbnb. We have a ton of content on our site, and we're able to see which are the least and most popular articles, and we also get tons of questions every week from hosts all around the globe. Seeing this, we just wanted to put something together that addresses many of the concerns for hosts that are just starting out. We recently published our article, The Ultimate Guide to Airbnb Hosting for Beginners. It's been one of our most popular articles yet, and today we'll review everything in that article. Also, there is an added bonus at the end of this presentation for live viewers. It's regarding our new Airbnb hosting course that comes out the first week of July. But first things first, if you have any questions today during the presentation, please make sure to email them to us at info@learnairbnb.com. You can see the email on the screen. We're going to cover a lot today. So without further delay, I'd like to welcome my partner Harvey to present the Ultimate Guide to Airbnb Hosting for Beginners. So Harvey, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're at. Very happy to be going over the topics today. If you haven't seen the blog post, don't worry about it. We're gonna be covering a lot of it today. Just a quick caveat, because we're going to be covering so many topics, we're not going to do a deep dive on any of the specific topics, but generally for today, we're going to cover two main categories of topics. One is, what are all the things that a new host should be thinking about or should do before they even list their first listing? Then after that, what are some of the things that you have to get right for your first listing? So we're going to just focus on these two big categories today. All right. Now, before your first listing, these are all the things to think about, all right? Here's the first thing that you should think about. The first thing is more of a sanity check. How do you know you're in a good enough Airbnb market so that it actually even makes sense for you to actually put in the time or the effort to try to list your unit or find a unit to list on Airbnb? And it all has to do with something called rental arbitrage. Now, it sounds kind of academic, but the idea is simple. It means what you can charge for the unit in a given month is much greater than what it costs you to get that unit. So if you already own the unit or you're just renting, say, an extra room from your unit, you could use a way to kind of guess what that cost for that unit for you is, right? So if you have a 2-bedroom apartment and you're renting one of the bedrooms, you could take the square footage of the bedroom and kind of estimate your costs for that room, and then look at comparable listings on Airbnb that are very similar in the same area that's listing that's one room, and look at what you can achieve for that. If you're looking for a dedicated unit, you want something that where your revenue potential is 2 times greater, at least, compared to the cost. Since you're not in it yet, right? If you're looking for something where you're going to be committing yourself to potentially a long-term lease, you want something that has that kind of potential. In fact, for very hot hosting markets, we've seen hosts in areas where they're able to do 3.5 times or more in terms of what they can make at fully leased, fully booked for the month compared to what it costs them. So this is more of a quick sanity check, all right? The next thing you want to think about is, what kind of host do you want to be? You could think about 3 general categories of hosts. So we have kind of the more occasional, opportunistic hosts. And these are the hosts that have an extra couch or an extra room. Once in a while, when they're out of town, they want to just make a few extra bucks because there's something going on and it's worth it for them to list it. There's so much demand just for that week because there's a special event going on. So these are kind of very opportunistic types of hosts. They don't want to do it consistently. They don't want to do it full time. The second type of host is somebody who's looking for a regular, consistent income, but it's not meant to replace their primary source of income. So they want to consistently lease up an extra room, all right? And the third kind of host is what you would call a professional host, a rentrepreneur. This is somebody who wants to have full-time dedicated units, and they want to have more than one unit, and they're looking to create a whole portfolio of these units so that it becomes your primary source of income. So if you think about you as a host and what what you want to achieve, think about which of these three you may fall closer to, because depending on which one you want to be, the income potential, the amount of work and the dedication, and also the strategies that you're going to be employing could be different. Now, the next thing to think about before you start is you have to have realistic expectations about how much time it takes to host. When a new hosts are thinking about Airbnb, they think most of the time that it takes them to host is just with check-ins and checkouts, but that's not the case. You have to respond to a lot of inquiries. You don't get to book each person that asks you about your space. Some places, some units require a lot more inquiries before you can land a booking. So you may have to respond up to 10 potential guests before you get a single booking. And all of that takes time as well. And in between checkouts and check-ins, well, you need to do cleaning. You got to have supply runs to make sure you don't run out of things. And a lot of times there are emergencies or things that are just unplanned for. All of this takes time and takes flexibility as well, because you can't just leave your guests hanging. So these are some of the things that you need to think about. Do you have the capacity, where you are right now in your life, could you be that flexible? Could you put in that kind of time, especially in the beginning when you're trying to get a new unit up and running? The next thing to think about is when you are totally new to Airbnb hosting, you're getting in there, you're not doing this on your own, especially if you're renting an apartment from an apartment complex. You are basically bringing your landlord into hosting as well, right? And your neighbors. So getting good with your landlords and with your neighbors can make the difference between whether your listing has a long life or not. We've seen a lot of hosts that start off really well, but they did it behind their landlord's backs, or they didn't take into consideration what their neighbors would think, and their units didn't turn out so well later, either because the landlords came in and put the hammer down, or the neighbors made it very difficult for them. So you got to think about your relationship with your landlord or your neighbors as well.
Yeah, and also you want to make sure you don't get caught with, especially if you're getting into a dedicated unit, you don't want to get caught with a large 12 or 18-month lease and you get kicked out after month 3 and you still have to pay that bill, and they may make you pay it quicker than you think as well, right? So
yes. Yeah, no, so if you are renting an apartment and you want to put an extra room on there, you should definitely check your existing lease agreement to make sure that you're able to do that. All right, for the next part, Jim's going to tell you a little bit about why you need to know who your customers are.
All right, so the target customer, you're in a business and you're going to have a target customer. It's someone that has a high affinity for where you want to be at. You cannot appeal to every guest, so you have to think about your location, the amenities, and the actual appeal or draw of the area. And after doing this, you can find out who is the most potential guest. And you really have to be honest with yourself, but most importantly with your guests, because you're going to be creating expectations for them. They've never been to maybe your town, area, or even your country. And if you're misrepresenting where they're going to be staying at or where they should feel most comfortable at, it's not going to end well, and it could be very detrimental for your future growth of your Airbnb unit. So you want to ask yourself a few questions. First, about your neighborhood. Who lives in the area? Are you in a neighborhood of a bunch of hipsters or business people or families? What attractions or draws are in the area? Do visitors come to your area for industry conferences, to visit theme parks, or just for the nightlife and concerts? Does it have broad appeal or very niche appeal? Can it be used for 2 different purposes? Maybe on the weekdays it attracts business people, and on the weekends it attracts tourists. And does this change seasonally? Where is your place located? Is it in a business district, or is it off a main freeway? Is it near a courthouse where lawyers would find it convenient to stay for extended period of times, or is it near a sports stadium? And lastly, are there a lot of hotels in the area? Now, you may think it's a positive or a negative thing the way you look at it. So if there are a lot of hotels in the area, you may not be able to compete with their pricing if the inventory of rooms is very high. Because if their inventory is very high, they're always discounting their rooms. So you want to always check and compare your rates and the new Airbnb rates that are out there. Are the potential Airbnb units making money versus the hotels? And then you want to ask questions about your potential rental unit. What type of property are you going to be offering? A full unit, a private room, or just a couch? And within the Airbnb community in the area you want to open in, what are the most popular units? Is it a lot of houses, or do people not mind flopping on a couch? Also, look at what amenities do you plan to offer. Do you have a pool? Do you offer parking? Like somewhere in San Francisco, parking can make all the difference, and someone will book you just because you have a parking space. And also, do you have a lot of storage space? Maybe if a large group is coming and they have a lot of luggage, they want to be able to spread out and see all the things they have and, quote unquote, live in your place for the week. And also, what is the positioning of your unit? Is it the nicest place on the block, or is it just passable? And as you gather this information, you can decide who you want to rent to. You get to cater to your rental unit and see who's going to enjoy spending time there the most. So is it going to be business people in a downtown district, or is it going to be families in larger groups near the theme parks? Again, like I said, you have to consider seasonality. You may be next to a water park, but if you're in a cold area, it's only going to work from like the late spring until the end of the summer, if that. So make sure you know when you're hopping in. Are you hopping in December and there's not really many draws in your area? Make sure you're launching in the right time and you're open and available in the right times of the year. So more on positioning, with your tourists, are they overseas tourists? Are they local tourists? Are they travelers? Are they young singles? Are they middle-aged couples, senior travelers, families? You have to consider this because you need to cater everything about the Airbnb guest experience to these people, because you are a business and you want to make your customers, your guests, very happy. And if you don't know what you are, look at the most successful and popular listings in the immediate vicinity of where you want to open, whether it's going to get a new unit in downtown Los Angeles or downtown Boise. Go and see what the best units are and who are they catering to and what are they positioning to. Then that will give you a starting point. And most importantly, don't overthink this too much. It's not half as hard as you think. Worst comes to worst, you can just walk to your nearest grocery store, walk to the nearest CVS or pharmacy and see who's actually living in the area and what do they do when they're there, and try to attract people that are just like them. And also make the list of the top 5 reasons people travel to your area and who would actually attend those events. Those are the people you're trying to attract. The next thing you want to look into is furniture. Okay, so it comes down to 2 things. After you find your target market, you want to say, all right, well, what amenities or things do they want to have in this unit while they're there? Okay, it's important. So it comes down to function and form. So function, what will it be doing and what benefits and challenges will it provide for the guests? Again, this comes back to, like I said, positioning and target of your audience. What do they want? So business travelers, they're probably looking for, desks or space to spread out and work in, and comfy beds because they've had hard days at work. Families, like I said, they want storage for their luggage and a place to relax at night together. Your furniture, it needs to be durable. People are going to be coming in and out of your unit very often, hopefully very often. Well, not actually hopefully, but they could be coming in every 2 or 3 days, and people are going to be living in your unit. So things like a glass entertainment unit or a glass top table, those can break, and they can also provide, if they break, a liability to someone getting hurt. And then that's going to create more time for you to have to actually go back and do things, and it could cause a whole mess of problems where it could shut your Airbnb unit down immediately. Next thing to look at is form. So what is it and what does it look like? To have great furniture, you do not need to spend thousands of dollars. You can be budget conscious, but don't buy cheap quality stuff. You can look at the Salvation Armies. Big Lots Furniture sometimes has good pieces to look at, but find things that, after 60 or 70 rotation of guests, it will not break, because you can go through 1 year of hosting, you can host up to 100 guests. If they're staying on average 3 days per stay, in 365 days, you're going to have at least 100 guests. So make sure that it can stand the test of time. Your cheap IKEA furniture, it most likely will not work. Guests, like I said, they're going to be in there. They're going to be living hard, so your stuff needs to be durable. And most guests don't treat stuff as nicely as they would their own things. And also make sure that the furniture you're buying, it's got to be easy to clean. A storage unit with a ton of shelves that people will not use and it's out of the way, and it has a lot of horizontal surfaces that collect dust, it's going to take a fair amount of time to clean. This gets back into how long does it take to host on Airbnb. So the more difficult the things you add in, or the more things you add in, usually when you have furniture, less is more, because people don't want to feel like they're in a cluttered space. And lastly, make sure that your furniture photographs well. People rent your place based on pretty pictures, and if you can't get them to at least click on your stuff, and if it looks too crowded, they won't even review your unit. So make sure you catch their eye to make them go on the slippery slope of reading down your description. Big beds with nice comforters, or big couches with living rooms, and big pillows. People get attracted to that because they know at least they're going to be sleeping there, and it's going to be a comfy place to sleep. You want to keep your stuff Instagram worthy. When someone walks in, will they take a picture and they put that on Instagram? Are they going to get 10 likes or 100 likes? Wow, I wish I could be in that Airbnb unit. So always keep that in mind. Is it got form and function? Is it durable? And is it photographed well?
Great. All right. So one more thing before you get your first listing, along the lines of the sanity check, is especially if you're going to be looking at a dedicated unit where you're going to be committing some dollars and time buying new furniture, putting in a security deposit, and maybe the first or last month to rent, and potentially committing yourself to a 12-month or longer lease. You want to make sure it's going to be worth your time. So one of the tools that you should use, we have a totally free model that you can download from learnairbnb.com. And what it allows you to do is to evaluate and compare different potential units. All right, so if you got like 2 or 3 units you're looking at, you use this model for each unit where you put in how much you need to spend, how much you got to put in for the deposits, get a sense of what you can make from it, as well as all the expenses, and it will tell you how long it takes for you to get paid back for your investment, when do you start breaking even, and what the whole unit will look like for you economically for the first 2 years. And if you can compare that for locations A, B, and C, this will give you a sense of which one is actually in the ballpark where it's worthwhile and worth your time versus those that aren't. And you can do this relatively quickly. You can find most of the information online to fill this in. And once you narrow it down to, say, your top 2 candidates, you can do a little bit deeper digging to kind of fine-tune your numbers. But this is very quick, easy, and it's free for you to do a sanity check. So highly recommend using our model for that.
And we also have an explainer video. It's a 13-minute video that walks you through step-by-step to put all the inputs and to actually understand the returns that you're getting and what are the inputs and outputs and what can you really expect. So if you go on YouTube and just search Airbnb host calculator, it'll be the first one to pop up for you there. So you're not left alone. And if you have any questions while you're running this financial model, we're always here to help as well.
Yeah. All right. So now that you've thought about all those things and you're ready to get your first listing up, here are some things that are very, very important to get correct for your first listing. First thing is, you got to remember that you only get one first impression on Airbnb. Now, we work with a lot of hosts, and of course, we don't have the actual evidence from Airbnb because they don't reveal it and open it up. But just from working with different hosts, we noticed that when a new listing goes on to Airbnb, even though it has no reviews and it's very new, some new listings will show up near the top of search results, but only for a short period of time. So it's usually within the first 2 to 4 weeks of a new listing being listed. Now, we think that's because Airbnb is trying to test and gauge whether this new listing is going to become one of the winners or whether it's going to be like the many others who are just, the listings that are going to be on the back pages of their results. What that means is your listing will have a limited window to make a first impression on Airbnb's algorithms. Airbnb is in the business to make money, and the way it makes money is to make bookings. And the way it can make booking is to make sure that it presents the listings that are most likely to convert a search into a booking. So if your listing in the beginning establishes itself as a unit that doesn't convert and doesn't do very well, because some hosts make the mistake of just getting the listing up there without a complete description, and they barely have any photos or they only have crappy photos. You're going to build a history of poor conversions, and then that listing is going to get on the third, fourth, and some later pages, and it's going to take a lot more effort and time after you fix it to try to get it up. So it's better to launch a couple of weeks later but have a much more complete listing than it is to start early without a complete listing. Now, some other smart practices to have once you get your first listing up, and some of these should be very obvious. Don't run out of essentials. Don't run out of toilet paper, don't run out of towels, don't run out of any of those bathroom essentials. And definitely make no unannounced visits. Don't just show up. Nobody likes that, right? You wouldn't want that during your hotel stay. So just if you have any questions about that, a good place to start is if you were a guest, what would you not want your host to do? So that's a good place to start. A third thing, which actually many new hosts tend to forget, is you need to have a spare key on hand and ready. Basically have a plan B. What happens if your guests are locked out in the middle of the night? Right, and you especially need to have a plan if you're going to be out of town during their stay, where you can't just respond and get them back in. That would be one of the worst things for a guest to experience if they're in a new town, especially if they're in a new country, and they're locked out late at night and can't get back into the unit. All right. The fourth thing is, a lot of new hosts tend to worry about their property, or worry about identity theft, especially if they're leasing, if they're booking just a single unit from their apartment or their house. There are some very easy steps for you to take that can take away your worry, right? So if there's things that you're going to be worried about while you're out and your hosts and your guests are in your unit, just put those in storage. Don't leave anything in the unit that you wouldn't feel comfortable leaving there. Don't just leave your passport on an open drawer. All right, just lock that up, put it in the safe, or put it somewhere else. A fourth thing that a lot of new guests, Airbnb hosts, tend to be worried about are squatters and other kind of risky guests. One of the things we want to let you know about squatters is they are very, very rare on Airbnb. They've had tens of millions of bookings, and you can probably only find a handful of these cases that the media blows up on the news, on the internet. And the vast majority of them, of those hosts, make some very simple mistakes that you as a new host can avoid making, and it would make you a very unattractive target for potential squatters right away. So one of those simple tips is don't do any transactions off of Airbnb. That's one of the first things that a squatter would like to do, is to try to entice new guests, new hosts with, hey, I'll pay you more, let's cut Airbnb out, you're gonna make more from our arrangement. It's better for you to have the full backing of Airbnb than to risk that. And the other thing has to do with the duration of stays. Most states, people don't get tenant rights unless they stay in some place for more than 30 days. Now, some states may be shorter, so you have to check with your own state for that. But Find out what it is for your state. Most states are 30 days. And if you just keep all your bookings to under that limit so that people can't book longer than that, you're going to avoid a lot of these issues as well. All right, the next thing that is super important for new hosts and for existing hosts, but especially for new hosts to get right. And it's something that is difficult because it requires a constant updating and upkeep and learning has to do with pricing. Your pricing for your unit should not stay static. That's because your market is always changing. The supply and demand for Airbnb spaces in your area can be changing seasonally, and it can be changing year over year just because that area is suddenly becoming more popular for travel. You don't know unless you keep track of that, and as long as you keep track of that, you need to be changing and updating your pricing accordingly. Otherwise, you're leaving money on the table. So, if you're, for instance, if you're priced too high, you're missing out on bookings. You're going to have more empty nights. But if you're priced too low, you may feel good with having high occupancy, but you're probably leaving a lot of money on the table, and you don't want to do either, right? By knowing where you are and knowing who you're competing with, it allows you to understand and see how much pricing power you have with your unit. If you're more of a Marriott than a Motel 6 in your particular market, then you have more pricing power. And things like even days of the week. One common mistake that a lot of very new, inexperienced hosts make is they keep a flat rate throughout the week. They're charging the same rate for weekdays as they do on weekends, and that's an easy way to leave money on the table. Another thing to remember about pricing is that the things that impact the pricing for your unit are hyper local. So what that means is, especially when there are special events or something very unique going on just in your area, kind of very close to your area, it will only affect your area. So if you're part of a bigger city and there's a big convention, but you're a mile from the convention versus another unit that is very similar to yours but 3 miles away, it's going to impact your unit a lot more than that unit that is 3 miles away. So knowing where, not just when these special events are happening, but where they're located and relative to your unit is important as well. So the next thing about pricing that to understand, it has to do with something called temporality. Now, this basically is a term to capture the timing of events. So when you're 6 months out from a special event versus when you're 3 days out, you shouldn't be pricing it the same. There's a way and a strategy to price your units coming up to a special event that allows you to try to make the most profits. So a way for you to try to get the most bookings as you can at the highest rates earlier on, and then adjust accordingly so that you're not stuck with an empty unit as you get really close to the day of the event.
Yeah, and one caveat to the dynamic pricing, a lot of hosts, we've seen suggestions are just like, it's simple, it's easy, just put 2 prices out there and charge something for the weekend and something for the weekday, and that's great. It can get you started, but like Harvey say, it's really leaving money on the table. And some of these pricing services, they can't take into account like that you have no reviews or that you have other intangibles, like you're going to be a tour guide for your hosts or for your guests, or that you have like all these amazing amenities and a hot tub and all that. They can't say what that is actually worth, but the time you save will more than make up for the drawbacks of these. And you also have the override feature in every one of these dynamic pricing services like Everbooked and Beyond Pricing to take back the control. And if you don't like what they're suggesting, you can take back the control and price it yourself accordingly the way you think to it. So it's at least something to explore. Most everyone gives a free trial, so it doesn't hurt to try it out. And the cost to move forward with most of them is such a small percentage that they'll help you make more money than it actually costs.
Yeah, and you can easily measure for yourself, how much time would you have spent to be able to keep track of all the events, keep track of your competitors' pricing, and making those adjustments on a weekly basis, or even multiple times during the week? Do it during the trial, track how much time you would have spent, and get an estimate for yourself what that gain is. So if you're making more than before for that amount of time, then you have a pretty good way to gauge whether that's worth it or not for your particular unit.
Correct.
All right, I think those are the topics that we're going to cover for today. Gene, you want to talk about the offer?
So why don't you go to the next slide and we'll talk about the special offer. So we have a special offer for those that are viewing live today, and for anyone that views this before the first week of July, we have a special offer. So if you go to the next slide, we have an Airbnb hosting course coming out the first week of July, and the way you can get in and get multiple benefits before anybody else is to visit learnairbnb.com/course and enter your email. And what you're going to get is you're going to get $200 off the Airbnb hosting course. It's normally $299, so you're going to be saving a lot of money on that. And then you're going to get discounts on all the consulting services that we offer. We do it by hour or by specific topic. You know, we can be reached by Skype, by telephone, and if you're local to the LA area, we can come out and meet you in your unit as well. As again I said, the course goes live the first week of July, and enrollment is very limited, and it's limited in the fact that we spend time with every one of our students that has questions, and we can't have so many students where we can't take care of you. And it's special that we've created, this course is taught and created by hosts. It's not a bunch of people that just coming up with these ideas. These ideas that we've have created best practices for, and we've implemented them with hosts in various markets. So we've seen the results of the things that we've taught before we teach them on a mass scale. And you'll have in this course hosts that are brand new or have never hosted, and hosts that have had 10 to 20 units at one time. We've consulted with hosts in a whole array of their Airbnb hosting careers. And the course will be updated regularly with many case studies, and from hosts all around the world. We'll do interviews, and we've been doing a lot of different things and great things to help bring you to that next level and take you and motivate you and inspire you to either get into Airbnb or take your Airbnb unit to the next level. So you'll again visit learnairbnb.com/course and enter your email. You'll get a confirmation email to let you know of the next steps. There's no more action needed on your part after that, and we'll let you know when the course launches in the first week of July. So moving on from that, I'd like to move on to any Q&A we have from our listeners today. And we've already received a few questions via email. So we covered a ton of stuff, and I hope that you guys found it all very helpful. And we'll make sure to put the details of the special offer within the description of the video and the webinar event page. So if you have any questions, please email the questions to info@learnairbnb.com, and we'll make sure to get those answered for you. And if you're watching a replay, also please email us at info@learnairbnb.com, and we'll get those answered for you personally. So Harvey, I'd like to ask you, our first question comes from Anna, and she says, Harvey, what is the biggest issue you see with people that go from being a casual host to becoming a professional host with 2 to even maybe 10 rental units?
That's a really great question. The things that it takes, the strategies that are used to optimize for a single unit for especially new hosts, their goals are different. They want to make the most money possible from their one unit. Whereas when you get to becoming a professional host with multiple units, you can't go do everything on your own. You know, going from 1 unit to 10 unit, you can't do the cleanings on your own for 10 units. So what ends up happening is a lot of people, they don't, when they're making that transition, they fail to recognize that they're no longer optimizing for the unit anymore, but they're optimizing for their time. So you go from trying to make the most money per unit to going to try to see how you can make the most return for every hour that you put in as a host. So that's a change of mindset, and it changes how you look at what using third-party services, because you're trying to get the most leverage for your time now, so you can add more and more units.
So you would suggest looking at some type of automation strategies, after you've gotten the bare bone minimum stuff done, and you're actually getting some inquiries and getting some bookings and some guests, start to play around with automation then if you want to expand, correct?
Yes, because if you don't look at automating, you don't look at services that can leverage your time, then the amount of commitment that you have to put in, your time grows linearly with the number of units that you add. You want to be able to add 5 units without adding 5 times the amount of time that you need to put in. So the only way to do that is to utilize third-party services that can help you leverage your time.
Great, great. All right, our next question is from Stacy in Michigan. She asks, is there an average time it takes to host on Airbnb?
Well, that's we get asked that question quite a bit, and the short answer is no, because the markets are very different, and each unit is very different. It really depends on what market you're in, how your unit is set up. It just depends on the average number of bookings that you can get per month. If you assume on average, kind of the average booking is 2 to 3 nights. So if you're booked up most of the month, you could get eight visitors. But if you're in a market where the average is not 2 to 3 nights per booking, but it's usually a week or 2, then you will have far fewer check-ins and check-outs, right? So it really depends on what market you're in, what kind of guests that are coming to the area, and how good your unit is.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's not going to be the same for every unit, and not even the same for every unit within every city. Every neighborhood may even have different challenges, like even finding parking for yourself when you have to manage your own unit. So
yeah, and going back to what we were just talking about, it also then depends on how much you're automating. Whether you're optimizing to make the most from your unit or to make the most from your time.
Very good point. Very good point. All right, our next question is from Jake in Florida. He asks, with Airbnb rentals, is there a certain average return on investment that you can expect, or is it different, or what is what should we be looking for in return on investment?
This is kind of similar in terms of the last question. The return, there is no average return, just because it really depends on what you're looking at and where you're looking at. But we have seen hosts that are in good markets, when they're evaluating using our calculator, looking at new units, you want to tend to be able to recoup your investment within 6 months. And you want to find places where your revenue potential is at least 2 times compared to what your cost would be, especially when you're evaluating for a new dedicated unit. Now, if you already have a unit and you have the extra space, what you're comparing it to is what are you doing with it right now? Usually it's nothing, right? People are just having a storage and having extra space, so they're not getting any return on that. And then so getting anything in addition would be a good return compared to what they're doing now.
Perfect, perfect. And we'll make the Airbnb calculator. We'll put that link in the video description for you and on the event page so you can check that out. Our next question we have is from Janice in California. She asks, for the Airbnb calculator, where can I find monthly rental rates? Because I don't have a unit already to rent out. So where would you go about trying to find what it costs to actually even acquire a dedicated rental unit, Harvey?
Yeah, that's a great one. So you want to split your kind of your research at the early stages in terms of kind of two stages. One, what we would call the desktop research. So this is kind of preliminary. You just want to kind of get in the ballpark and reduce 10 different options that you're looking at, maybe down to 3 or 4. And for this first stage, what you can do is, in terms of rental rates, I mean, you can look at similar listings on Airbnb. That's the best way for you to get a gauge of what kind of rates you can achieve. So find very similar, comparable rates. Look at both the weekday and weekend rates. Grab a few of those units from the first page and just track them and take the average for those, so you get a sense of that. In terms of your costs, you can get the rates by calling the units, calling the apartment that you're looking at, or the units that you're looking at. You can check out their website and just get a feel for that. So when you're looking at all these different units, you have the revenues assumptions, you get your cost assumptions. You could get a quick gauge of where they compare to each other on that basis. Now, once you have it down to say a few, two to three of the best candidates, what you want to do is you want to actually get the data like going to those areas. And a lot of times what you see is if you drive in those specific neighborhoods, you're going to see listings for apartments for things that are not listed online. And also, they don't, many of those apartments or places that like to rent, sometimes they don't like to publish special incentives on the internet. So things like you get 1 month free, or you get half off on the security deposit. Those sometimes you only find out if you show up in person. So once you have a few options, when you don't have 10, you got 2 or 3, go do that and you can find out. So what you'll find is that things that you find out online are sometimes more of a ceiling in terms of your costs. You may be able to do better by showing up in person. So once you do that, you could kind of fine tune your numbers and really look at which one makes more sense.
Exactly, yeah, and also you get the chance when you go down to actually meet these potential dedicated units, you can feel it out to see if they're open for short-term rentals like Airbnb. What is their attitude towards it? Is it something that they're very cut and dry in a private community where they want no rotational guests, or is it something that they are already doing and they don't mind and they're just looking for more people to open up in their apartment complex? So
Yeah.
Make sure you get down and do the research. It is time consuming, but you only have to do it once. And
the part about visiting the places is you're not just checking for the rate. You're driving around. You're trying to see, is it going to be easy for a guest who's not familiar with the area to be able to find it? Can they find it and find parking? Is it going to be easy for them to get there? Just are there other businesses or things that are nearby that, may detract from their experience or add to the experience? So you want to really get a good feel for the areas, right? And then you can only do that by actually being there.
Yep, exactly. All right, again, for the viewers, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us. We're going to stay on here for a few more minutes and we're going to wait some more questions. But I just want to review the special offer one more time. All you have to do to claim is just visit learnairbnb.com/course, enter your email, and when the course launches, you're going to receive a $200 off coupon to the course, as well as a lifetime discount on all of our consulting services. The class will be going live the first week of July 2015. And again, enrollment is very limited. We're going to only open it up to a few hundred hosts to start off with, and open more spots as it goes forward. Again, the details will be posted in the video description as well as on the event page. Let me check again to see if we have any more questions coming in on the event page or through the email. Give me one moment, people.
Yeah, while Jim's checking, I could give a little bit more light to kind of how the course is structured. So if you could think about it being structured in kind of 3 main parts. The first one gearing towards how do you get a new unit started? So all the things, especially for those that are new hosts, all the things that we talked about, we go into a lot of detail. We actually show you very specific tactics that you can employ right away. The second part will be, well, once you have a unit, of how do you get the most money that you can get out of that unit for the least amount of time that you need to put in for that unit? What are the different strategies? And how do you actually diagnose what's wrong with your unit? And what are the different solutions that you can try to mitigate those? Then the third part would be, how do you go from 1 or 2 units to 5, 10, even 20 units? How do you build systems that allow you to run an entire portfolio of Airbnb units so that you become a professional rentrepreneur?
Exactly, fantastic, and it's like I said, it's a course that's created by hosts and taught by hosts and supported by hosts. So we want to make sure that everyone gets an authentic experience when they're taking the Airbnb hosting course via learnairbnb.com. So we don't have any more questions coming in. So that's all the questions and tips we have for today. But viewers, if you have any questions, again, please feel free to email us. We are always available to help you out. And Thank you again for supporting the Learn Airbnb community. We appreciate your support. And again, if any questions pop up, feel free to get in contact with us. Thank you for joining, and everyone have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.